6 o'clock. We stand for the pledge of allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Reminder to please turn your cell phones off, and council, please turn your microphones on. Andrew, can we have roll call, please?
Mayor Bain.
Here.
Councilor Anderson. Here. Councilor Baker. Here. Councilor Quinlan.
Here.
Councilor Scalisi.
Here.
Councilor Sherman. Here.
Okay, the approval of minutes. Everybody's had a chance to see the minutes from the regular meeting of August 13th. Do we have any corrections? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
So moved.
A motion, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion is stand approved as submitted. Visitors and delegation, we don't have anybody scheduled. So we'll move on to citizen comments. Citizens are invited to speak to council on items that are not on the agenda. There's a 3-minute time limit per person unless otherwise noted by the mayor. Please note that no formal action will be taken on these items during this time due to the open meeting law provision. However, they may be placed on a future posted agenda if action is required. Is there anyone that would like to speak to council? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to management. We have a public hearing tonight, and I'll open the public hearing on subdivision preliminary plat from the City of Brush for Agri Park Subdivision Number 1, located northeast of Highway 71 and County Road T. Current address is 19188 Highway 71, Brush, Colorado. Okay, we have a staff report from Karen.
Good evening. I ask that you bear with me. There's a lot of material to cover, so this is just going to take a little bit of time to get through everything. So this is the second of a 3-phase process to subdivide property. I tried to explain it at Planning Commission as using the analogy from English class in high school, that when you had the big term paper, the teacher often wanted to see your outline, a rough draft, and a final paper. We are now in the rough draft phase of things. And so what we're doing here is the applicant is supposed to provide the city with an overall master plan for the proposed subdivision. It's more detailed than that sketch plan was, and it needs to incorporate the comments and guidance that were provided at that prior sketch plan phase. Once we get through this stage, assuming an approval is granted, their job is to then take all that information back and finalize all of the engineering and the plat. And it's after that final plat is approved and conditions are satisfied that that plat and any improvement agreement that goes with constructing infrastructure, all that gets recorded at the clerk's office. And once those documents are recorded, it's at that point that any of the lots being created through the subdivision can then be sold or transferred to a new landowner. Until that final plat is recorded, the actual transfer of land cannot happen legally under Colorado law. And so what you have in front of you is a parcel that's about 61 acres in size, and it's located northeast of Highway 71 and County Road T. And the west property line of this abuts Highway 71. This property was originally part of the English feedlot, and in early 2018, earlier this year, the city annexed that property and then a parcel to the south of it. Both of these parcels were zoned for industrial uses. This property is surrounded primarily by cultivated farm ground that remains under the jurisdiction of Morgan County. The exception, and there is also a neighboring house located at the northwest corner of that property. The parcel immediate to the south, that's inside city limits, contains a stormwater pond that serves downtown Brush, and then there's also a shop complex that supports city operations. Over the past several years since the city purchased the property, it's undergone significant cleanup activities, and we've been working to remove manure, pens, fences, feed bunks, all those kind of items that were part of the feedlot operations. And then this past year, significant regrading has also been done on the northeast area of the property. And while this property is largely vacant, there is a house and a residential garage located at the southwest area of the property. It was earlier this year in January when the Planning Commission looked at that sketch plan or the outline for what was being proposed for this property. And it was at that meeting they came back with a list of guidance and suggestions that they wanted to see incorporated into the preliminary plat phase. That list of guidance is included in the staff report. So what we have in front of us this evening is a preliminary plat application entitled Agri-Park Subdivision Number 1. And this parcel was previously unplatted, and right now they're proposing 2 lots. Lot 1 will be 23.18 acres and Lot 2, 34.7 acres. And this preliminary plat also depicts future lots and an interior road that will loop through the property and connect Highway 71 in 2 locations. This parcel has a slightly irregular shape. The west property line, like I said, abuts Colorado Highway 71. The majority of the north property line is adjacent to the Camden Ditch. That east property line curves around the end of an irrigated crop circle, and that south property line has a little bit of a jog in it where it abuts the other city-owned property. This property, since it was only annexed earlier this year, has not previously been served by city utilities. There are wastewater lines, City of Rush wastewater lines, located in the Highway 71 right-of-way. And then this spring, the city did install a water main in Highway 71 right-of-way from the Industrial Park Road area, which is to the south, up Highway 71 to the southern entrance into the subject property. Xcel Energy has existing overhead electric lines along Highway 71. So there's 2 accesses into the property being proposed. The primary one, or that's the north entrance, and it's proposed to be located adjacent to that north property line. The south entrance off of Highway 71 will be about 300 feet north of the south property line, where it touches Highway 71. And like I said, these 2 entrances will ultimately connect via a new interior road that will be constructed within the subdivision. Within this first phase, only a portion of that road is proposed to be constructed, and they're looking at the north part of that road, so from the north entrance where it touches Highway 71 over to the east where it would abut property or lot number 1, and then it would turn to the south and would terminate at the southern property line of lot 1. Other parts of the road would be constructed as subsequent subdivision plats and phases are proposed. Within the application, there's some preliminary engineering, and that proposes that both water and wastewater mains be located within the interior road. And then there's some additional easements also proposed on that plat. There's 6-foot general utility easements along the sides of the proposed road that should accommodate dry utilities such as electric, gas, and communications. And then there's 15-foot general utility easements around the perimeter of the property, which are there to help facilitate other growth in the area as other surrounding parcels are potentially annexed and developed. And that's like long-term visionary. There's no immediate plans to annex any of those other properties there. With regard to stormwater, the preliminary engineering includes an analysis of site drainage, and then is proposing a stormwater pond on the west side of Lot 1. And that pond is being designed to accommodate stormwater from other lots within the subdivision. So now we're going to dive into a little bit greater detail about the plat and the engineering. So when you look at that plat, one of the things we wanted to verify is the lot sizes, and they are well in excess of the minimum lot size that's required, with it being just under a half an acre is the minimum required lot size, and both of these lots are well over that, with one being over 23 acres and the other being over 34. And it's because of these large lot sizes and the fact that they have fairly regular shapes, it's anticipated that new users of this land will be able to comply with building setback requirements for the zone district. And then when you look at the plat, specifically at Lot 2, there's some dotted lines in there, and that shows where you're likely going to see subsequent applications creating an additional 5 lots. And even when we look at those lots for future development, those lot sizes are also of multiple acres and should be more than able to accommodate buildings and setbacks within that zone district. On the west side of Lot 2, there's a 70-foot wide strip of land labeled Future Right-of-Way. This is an area being reserved in anticipation of CDOT eventually wanting to widen that highway to accommodate the Ports to Plains travel route. And then there's also the potential need for a turning lane at that north entrance into the subject property. This is temporary wording, and I do need to consult with the city's land use attorney to make sure that we get accurate wording in there in terms of what that should actually be labeled. There are 2 additional easements that do need to be added to the plot. One is for the stormwater pond that'll be located on the west side of Lot 1. And then the other is within that area of the balance of that future road. So from the southern property line of Lot 1 as it goes down to the south and curves west to where it would connect with Highway 71. It's being proposed to install water and wastewater lines in there. And until such time as that's actually a dedicated road, dedicated to the public, the city needs to protect their asset, or the infrastructure there, and it should be labeled with a general utility easement. Regarding water and wastewater adequacy, there was a statement supplied with the application that there's more than adequate water supply and wastewater treatment available to service these lots. I do want to note that since it's zoned industrial, there is a very strong potential that the end user would be required to enter into a utility agreement with the city of Brush related to their utility usage. With regard to soils, there was a soils report in there from Earth Engineering Consultants, and they took borings in the property, the majority of which were in the proposed Lot 1, and some additional borings in the upper part of that loop road. They did identify the presence of clay soils with a low to high swell potential, and so it's anticipated engineered foundations should be required for buildings that are going to be constructed in the subdivision. And then since the boring was very limited on the area known as Lot 2, additional soil borings and reports are going to be necessary when somebody wants to build on that particular lot. Because of the swell potential identified in those soils, the city's review engineer you flagged that for us as a concern, and they're especially concerned about the infiltration rates within that site, especially under the area of Lot 1, the west side there where that stormwater pond's going to go. So they're requiring additional analysis be done to ensure that any stormwater that lands in that pond will actually perk into the ground. One of the other items we're supposed to review for is the natural hazards, and within this property there is not any extreme topography, floodplain, or any other hazards been identified. However, at sketch plan, they did note that through the phase 1 environmental assessment that was done, there were some recognized environmental concerns. And in your application, there was a statement from the applicant that all of those had been addressed. Since the property connects with Highway 71, a right-of-way access permit is required through CDOT, and the access permit application was included with the application, but that has yet to be reviewed and approved by CDOT. There was also a traffic study submitted. Within that, they concluded that over the short term, the current lane configuration is sufficient. However, additional turn lanes will be likely to be required to accommodate that long-term traffic. And when their view of long-term within that study, I believe it was the year 2040. So it's a good distance out, but is potentially going to be required. And it is recommended this traffic study be included with the access permit application to CDOT. Regarding erosion control and drainage, the engineer that the city hired to review this application had a number of comments, and all those were identified in his report dated June 8th of 2018. And then and those items are going to need to be resolved and clarified, as we go forward with the application. The preliminary engineering for utilities and roads was also reviewed by the city's engineer, and there's some plan sheets that were in your packet that had annotated notes from that engineer, and there are a number of items and details that need further refinement there. Information that is still needed is a turning radii study of the proposed roads, just to ensure that the right-of-way is sufficient to accommodate the semi-truck traffic, especially since this area is zoned industrial. You want to make sure that it will be able to support a fairly large number of semi-trucks. Since this is a first phase of the development, that interior road is not proposed to go through. It will terminate at the south property line of Lot 1. One of the items that needs to be supplied is a road section that clearly identifies the type and depth of materials that are going to be provided in the construction of this road. And it's important that we get a chance to look at this, given that semi-truck traffic that we're anticipating. There's also a concern that this interior road is going to dead end at the end of that Lot 1. That road length from its entrance to that point is over 1,000 feet in length. So a temporary cul-de-sac will be needed at the end of that road, and that's there to facilitate emergency vehicles in turning around should they have to respond to something out in that area. As subsequent sections of the development and the road are extended, this cul-de-sac would likely need to be moved further to the south, or at such time as when the road loops all the way through to Highway 71, it will no longer be necessary. Xcel Energy had the opportunity to look at the proposed plat, and they responded with a letter, and they're looking for additional, or actually what the staff's conclusion was, is that the developer needs to provide documentation with the final plat application that the design details for this project have been approved by Xcel. Regarding fire protection, this area is now located within the city of Brush, so it's the Brush Volunteer Fire Department that would respond to an emergency out there. And there are several fire hydrants identified on the utility plan for the subdivision. And it's anticipated additional fire hydrants may be installed as part of the overall utility plan on individual lots, and then as other lines get installed. Regarding dedications and performance guarantees, the streets on the proposed plat are to be dedicated as public rights-of-way, and this is a requirement of the city ordinance. And then the easements for the various purposes specified are going to be established with the recording of the plat. There's no other areas such as parks or open space that would need to be dedicated. One of the items that came up at the sketch plan that was of great concern was the right-of-way for the Camden Ditch. This has been documented on the proposed plat. This 25-foot right-of-way was established by an agreement between James Tuckerman and the Camden Lateral Company in 1925. This agreement was never recorded in the county records. However, the secretary for that ditch company provided us with a copy of the agreement so it could be correctly referenced on this plat. As drawn, the 25-foot right-of-way is centered over the current ditch location, so there's 12.5 feet on either side of the center line of the ditch. A copy of the proposed plat was sent to the ditch company for their review and comment. We've heard nothing back from them, so we're working under the assumption that this meets their needs. And with regard to any potential covenants or restrictions, none are being proposed at this time. Within the staff report, we looked at how this compared under the comprehensive plan, and there's a number of goals and policies that support this type of development. And then this was properly noticed through the newspaper, a sign on site, and then notices were mailed to property owners within 300 feet. And during this review period, no comments were received in our offices here. So the conclusion is, on August 20th, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item and made a recommendation that City Council approve the proposed preliminary plat for Agri-Park Subdivision Number 1 with 13 conditions and requirements. 1, the preliminary plat approval will expire after 24 months of City Council decision. I do note that the code standard is only 12 months. This was thrown in there to allow some extra time should they not be able to get everything taken care of within 12 months, or even if it was pushing 13, wanted to make sure they had adequate time and space to take care of things. Number 2, clarify and amend the wording on the plat currently labeled as future right-of-way. Item 3, add an easement for the common stormwater pond that is to be located on the west side of Lot 1. 4, an approved CDOT access permit must be submitted with the final plat application. 5, all comments from the city's development engineer, RG and Associates, June 8th, 2018 review are to be fully addressed and resolved. Number 6, 100% complete civil engineering drawings are required to be submitted with the final plat application. 7, a full drainage report is required to be submitted with the final plat. 8, a turning radius analysis for semi-trucks must be submitted with the final plat application, demonstrating the proposed road is sufficient to accommodate this type of traffic. 9, road section specifications that clearly identify the type and depth of material must be included in the final engineering. 10, a temporary cul-de-sac with an all-weather surface sufficient to support emergency vehicles is required to be constructed where the interior road terminates at the south property line of Lot 1. 11, documentation that Xcel Energy has approved the design details for this project must be submitted with the final plat application. 12, a proposed development agreement, including all attachments and exhibits, is required with the final plat application. And 13, need to add an easement for the city utility lines to be located within the future interior road, known as Agri Park Road in Lot 2. So, questions?
One question I have, Karen, because the city is actually the applicant on this action, did you combine the staff report and the applicant presentation together? Do you have additional information?
I'm serving as the planner, the city staff review. At the Planning Commission, the city administrator represented the applicant.
On my agenda tonight, though, it says staff report by Karen and applicant presentation, Karen also.
That I did that because I didn't know this.
Okay, so we'll Monty do that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions for Karen on what she's presented? No? Okay. Okay, moving on to the applicant presentation, Monty.
Okay, I'll just make it quick. The city purchased the property a few years ago, and the intent of purchasing the property was to, number one, clean it up. You know, it was a feedlot for a lot of years, and it hadn't been used in quite a few years as a feedlot. And also there are some water rights that were tied to the property that we used to just enhance what we have for our water portfolio for the city. We also, in the future, may utilize the farm ground for biosolids, reclamation site, I think is what we call it, application site. And then we also talked about what do we do when we clean up the property. And we went through a long process after we reviewed our city's comprehensive plan. But we went through a long process, Tyler taking the lead on that, putting together what's called the Brush Agri Park master plan. And that master plan was approved by city council a few months back, and that's been our guiding document. So the way that the layout is on this preliminary plat, it's very, very close to what Tyler had put together as some conceptual designs. And those conceptual designs had been brought to council last year to look at, and everyone agreed it kind of fit the area. And now the use of the property is, we have part of it that's still in ag, which is the farm ground. We have a small area that we're calling the city complex. That's where our solid waste shop is located. And we also have Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They're leasing a little bit of ground out there for their offices. That was put in a few months ago. And then we also have one storage building for the Brush Museum and the volunteers. They needed places to put some of their equipment. And then our Parks Department needed a place to put some of their supplies, and so it's located out there in the old, I think it's called the old vet building. We refurbished that one for that purpose. And then the rest of it, after talking to council, you know, we thought the best use would be commercial and industrial type property. I believe it's all zoned right now industrial to start, and in the future there could be some commercial lots along the front of the highway there. But right now everything's industrial, and we thought that would be the best use of it. So after reviewing the comp plan, putting together the master plan, it was put on as a city council priority the last 3 years, I believe, to work on this. And so that's what staff has put together. And actually it's on this upcoming years. One of our next discussions is going to be priorities for 2019, 2020. and the Brush Agro Park project is on there for the future as well. So overall, it's really cleaning up an old feedlot, making it into a very viable piece of property. And we think that once we get it cleaned up a little further, get the roads through it, we'll see a lot more development coming pretty quickly out there.
Have any questions in the morning? Okay, no questions, we'll move on to public testimony. Members of the public have the opportunity to make statements either in support of the application or in opposition to the application. Anyone addressing the council, including the applicant, must first come to the podium and state your name and address before making your comments. Each party giving testimony will be given one opportunity to speak and must direct all questions regarding the application to the mayor. Is there anyone that would like to speak on the application tonight? No? Okay. Final questions. Does council have any final questions regarding this application? Nothing? Okay. I'll close the public hearing, and I would ask for a motion to either approve or deny the subdivision preliminary plat.
I make a motion that we approve the preliminary plat for the Agri Park subdivision number 1.
With the conditions, or how? do you-
As with conditions that were lined, the 13 conditions.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve with the conditions. Do we have a second? Second. Further discussion? Well, one thing I did notice, it does Karen, you did an excellent job dovetailing this into the comprehensive plan to show how it actually fits the goals and strategies that were put in place many years ago. Is there anything else? Roll call vote, Andrea.
Mayor Bain,
Yes.
Counselor Anderson.
Yes.
Counselor Baker,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Scalisi,
Yes.
Counselor Sherman.
Okay, moving on to 5B. We have a resolution to accept Cotton Street, presented by Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. In your packet, you should find Resolution 2018-14, a resolution accepting Cotton Street from Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores Incorporated. As we're aware that the construction was pretty much finalized late last year. However, there was some portions of the street that I found to be substandard and would not accept. Because it was late in the year, they didn't have the opportunity to correct it, and so they came back in this year and finished up some of the repairs. So at this point, I would deem that it meets our minimum standards, and as such, recommending that we accept Cotton Street from Love's Travel Stops and Country Store.
Okay, do we have a motion to either approve or deny the resolution?
I move we approve Cotton Street.
Second.
A motion with second discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Counselor Anderson,
Yes.
Counselor Baker,
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan,
Yes.
Counselor Scalisi,
Yes.
Counselor Sherman,
Yes.
Mayor Bain.
Yes. Okay, I'll go ahead and read the resolution now. It's been approved. Resolution number 2018-14, a resolution accepting Cotton Street. Whereas all required items for the completion of Cotton Street have been constructed and installed to the standards and specifications of the city, and the agreement for the construction of Cotton Street between the City of Brush and Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores Incorporated. And whereas it would be in the public interest for the city to accept Cotton Street and its associated public improvements, which may include curb, gutter, roadway, signage, storm drainage / sewer. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Brush. Number 1, the city formally accepts Cotton Street and its associated public improvements. Number 2, this resolution shall be recorded with the city clerk to recognize such acceptance, passed, adopted, and approved at this regular meeting of City Council, City of Brush, Colorado, on August 27, 2018. Moving on to 5C, adopt council priorities for 2019, staff report by Monty.
Okay, in your packet is a copy of the city council priorities for 2019. Most of these are, they're rolling over from last year. We have a lot of work that we still have to do on some of these priorities. So we included those from last year, or I guess from this current year, gonna roll part of those over into next year. And there were a few that we did add to this after discussion at our last meeting, our last week's meeting, which was a priority setting meeting for the city. And some of the ones that we included were technology upgrades in various departments, development of an ADA plan for public improvements, and then there's one other one, if I can find it. Number 7 on our administrative priorities was development standards guide. That's for our planning department and public works department, where we have a set development standards, so that anytime someone comes in to develop in the community or annex into the community, we give them a booklet. It's all spelled out for them, makes it easy for their engineers, their planners, to work with our city staff. And those are the changes. We have a very busy year coming up this next year, and so we're excited just to carry on with some of these priorities.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve or deny and adopt the council priorities for 2019 as submitted?
I move we approve.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, discussion. Andrea, roll call vote, please.
Counselor Baker?
Yes.
Counselor Quinlan?
Yes.
Counselor Scalisi?
Yes.
Counselor Sherman?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Moving on to finance.
Okay, for finance, actually I need you all to be aware that there's a change in the total amount. So the amount, I make a motion that we approve city expenditures from August 13th through the 27th of 2018 totaling $286,640.90. And the reason is there was an omission, there was an error in the bill from Denver Industrial Pumps. That's the difference.
Okay, I have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Second, discussion.
It was 28,000 to Metro Fence. Who's Metro Fence? What is that for?
Is it the
That's a
cemetery?
cemetery.
Oh, cemetery fence, cemetery fence.
All right.
And what cemetery fence?
On the north,
Please.
or actually the south side of the cemetery got a new fence. The white fence that used to be there is gone, and now we have a black metal fence.
Was that storm related or was that just on the?
It was an old white plastic fence, and so they upgraded that because it was harder to find the replacement pieces.
And the other bill was for $11,000 for Dardanus for tree cleanup by, so that must be storm?
Part of the storm, too many trees were down. We have a small crew, so we hired out some tree services there, hired a local company. And also they're gonna do some follow-ups. That was the first 1 or 2 of their bills. We'll have more bills coming still from doing a lot of the tree trimming, taking some of the dead branches out of the taller trees, those type of things.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion on finance? Roll call vote, please.
Counselor Quinlan?
Yes.
Counselor Scalisi?
Yes.
Counselor Sherman?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Yes.
Counselor Anderson?
Yes.
Counselor Baker?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to mayor and council reports. Do we have any council reports? Nothing tonight? Okay, we have a change in our work session. We had 4 different discussions on the agenda. We don't have the chief here tonight, so we're gonna strike the emergency sirens discussion and put that on a future agenda. But we'll have the other 3. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay. Wait,
Staff reports?
Should you say?
oh, you're right. Do we have any other further staff reports?
Travis?
Tyler?
Yeah, just one report. Our stakeholders meeting, our stakeholders group, Brush Stakeholders Group met today, and we had Mary Gross, who's the executive director of the Family Center, Morgan County Family Center, come and speak on behalf of, I guess, what's happening in child care, early childhood development right now. And in addition to what she's doing with the Family Center, she's been assisting just the overall work that's being done throughout the county. And so we had probably a 30 to 45 minute discussion about just what is happening with child care throughout Morgan County. because we had identified that as one of our top priorities in our Partnering for Progress efforts. And so some of the things that she brought to the table, right now there's 29 licensed providers in Morgan County, 6 of those in brush, 5 of those 6 are in homes right now. And they've been working to equip people to get licensed, because we know that's a huge desert, as it was referred to today, childcare desert that we have out here. And there's a lot of different challenges. I won't dive into all those right now, but they're putting efforts in place to and partner with other organizations, including what we're trying to do with our Partnering for Progress to establish some of those different avenues for child care overall. So I just wanted council to be aware and the community to be aware that that is a valuable asset for finding child care, equipping people to become certified in child care. And the library, the East Morgan County Library, has also been partnering in efforts for that. MCC has been bringing in some different aspects of training and education with legislation that's passed this past year, which has opened up the door for people without a license to be able to provide additional services or more kids to be able to be brought into their homes to take under their wing for child care. And so just equipping them in the right way and the different resources that are out there. So again, just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Okay, Public Works, Dale, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to point out that the city did actually contract with 2 local tree service companies to help remove some of the hazards out of the trees due to the high winds and tornadoes that we had about 3-4 weeks ago. And as such, if they're still there, please be patient. I split the list amongst the 2 companies, and they are working at it. And if at some point in time where they deem that they are done and we still have some hazards, we'll address those individually.
Thanks.
So, thank you.
City Clerk, Andrea.
Just call your attention to your list of meetings and events. And September 20th or 27th, Hill Rose will be hosting the city-county meeting. They were still working out the date, so be prepared to let me see if you can attend that. And then if you could get to me sometime this week whether you'll be attending the October 4th CML Fall District meeting in Ray so that I can RSVP. Other than that, everything's there for you to look at.
Okay, City Administrator.
Okay, the fire department building, every time you drive by, you see more and more going on there, so we're pretty excited because probably in the next few weeks, you're gonna see them starting to close up that building, and the outside shell will be done, and they're still projecting a mid to late October timeline for having it complete. So it's looking good.
Okay, now I'll take a motion to adjourn. Okay, we're adjourned. Work session